Hi there, hello and welcome. A very good morning to all our TVC viewers. This Thursday morning, we've got lots to think about. Starting with what kind of exposure, digital exposure and social media exposure do really we want our kids to have? What can platforms do about it? What Instagram has done, is it enough? We'll also talk to some young folks out there trying to go back to their roots to understand what really matters. All of that coming up on the program. I'm Sonal Mehrotra Kapoor. Let's get started. Sleep, screen time and safety. Social media with the curfew after Instagram's push for teen safety. But does more control mean less risk? And is it enough? We'll deep dive into that. Content creator Divya Fofani's 24-hour Mandal Marathon. What exactly makes him do it and how did it go? We'll have a chat. Gorilla 450 versus Speed 450 VS versus the Maverick 440. Where does the power lie? Speed versus style. Which retro roadster really wins an overdrive verdict? And today also on the program, we are looking at Kamala Harris's power dressing, from pearls to suits, bumps. What exactly does take center stage? Crisp, classic and confident. We break down Kamala Harris's fashion formula. All right, it's finally happening. If you are a teenager below the age of 18 and watching this right now, your gram life is about to change. Instagram is putting users under the age of 18 into a new teen accounts and quote unquote there to allow parents greater control. All Instagram accounts belonging to users under the age of 18 now will automatically transition into what is now being called an Insta Teen account with some default settings. Now, what are these settings? These settings mean that there will be daily time limit, meaning teenagers will be nudged to closing the app after 60 minutes of usage of Instagram in a single day. They will also block your account from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. so no overnight doom scrolling. Your accounts will also not be public anymore. That means no unknown person can reach out to you. And exposure to content will be limited, and if Instagram is to be believed over there, age appropriate as well. Parental consent will be required to change any of these default settings into making any changes over there. But why? Why this sudden Hriday Parivartan, as you would say, all of a sudden by Instagram? Well, Meta, remember, which is Instagram's parent company, is under tremendous pressure, facing several lawsuits in UK, US, several countries in the European Union as well, where they've been questioned on what is the role that these apps play in the mental health of our younger generation. All of this has come under question. There is also question of digital addiction, children's safety, unhealthy idolization. The list is really long. These changes now have been applied by Instagram and not on the other apps, not on WhatsApp, not on Meta as well, formerly known as Facebook. And they will kick in over the next 2 months in US, UK, Australia. India, we don't have a timeline just yet on. It could take much longer. But the question really on our minds this morning is this: how exactly will this help? And is this enough? Let's take those questions to our guest. Joining us now is Aparajita Bharti. She's the founding partner of TQH Consulting. She works in navigating children's privacy and parental consent under the DPDP Act of 2023. Also with us is Uday Mahurkar. He's a former Information Commissioner with the Government of India. He's also the founder of Safe Culture, Safe Bharat Foundation that has urged Centre to ban social apps altogether for violations under the POCSO. Let me sort of come to you first, Aparajita. The question on everybody's mind is that, yes, they have been cornered. Instagram has been cornered into bringing in these, moves and finally these settings which have been talked about for years now. the major change, just because generally content settings is not a subject that a lot of people know about, these settings are always there. They were never your default settings, which has been made now. They were always available. Parents could always exercise these settings, but they were not default. That's the only flip really that has happened. But at this point, would you say, something is better than nothing, or would you say this was long overdue?
You raise a very good point, whether this is enough and what prompted these changes. I think as you rightly said, there's a lot of pressure from around the world, from governments around the world on social media to make sure that children have a safe online experience. I think there are three main concerns that these changes are responding to, and those changes, those three main concerns is one, time spent online, because that takes away from children's other activity. Then the kind of content they are seeing online, and the third is just unwanted contact, right? I mean, we see a lot of cases of grooming, just unsafe contact is something that parents are really concerned about. So if you really see these changes, they are trying to respond to all three of them. They're also trying to give more control to parents, which parents have always wanted to. I think there is always a cat and mouse game between parents and children. And I think by making these app changes, the idea is, how do you give more control to parents? Whether this is enough or good enough is also dependent on how many parents actually know that these controls exist and how many of them are actually using them.
Yeah.
So some of these parental controls have existed since a long time across apps, but many social media platforms have not been very transparent that how many parents actually use these controls and how many children's accounts are actually linked to their parents. So in addition to all these settings that have been introduced, which I think is a great way forward, there also needs to be more transparency around how many users are actually using them, and maybe the app also needs to nudge more parents to actually switch on these settings.
Right. So I have lots of questions really, but let me bring in Uday Mahurkar at this point. Sir, the point is that kids always find a way to get around things. We've seen this in the past as well. You bring in a setting, they'll find, if not a parent, then an older cousin to sort of wave off. They will figure out a way to change their age. There is no verification that can happen really. Then there is a whole question of shared devices. I'll come to that. But in your opinion, how does this really play out and perhaps, we can be critical about it and we should be, but the point is no other app except TikTok has actually gone ahead to do this.
No, it's a significant step, but not enough. You see, what kind of stuff is coming on these platforms? I mean, my Safe Culture Se Bharat Foundation is running a campaign against sexually perverted content on all audiovisual platforms, including OTT. Now, Instagram is not exactly, you don't see pornography on it, but then sometimes it's very bad for the children, So basically, what stuff is being uploaded or placed on this app, on this medium, I think it's more important. I personally think, because the situation is very, very, very bad in this country. There are, in the last 6 months, last 2 months, there are 6 cases of brother raping a sister and underage. There are at least 6 cases of children around 8-10 years, boys raping a 5-year-old girl, So, situation is very dangerous. I'm not saying Instagram is solely responsible for it, but then the kind of stuff which is, there is one girl, this happened a few months ago. She was hardly wearing anything and she posted a reel on Instagram while traveling in a metro in Delhi. So basically, I fully agree with you that children are so smart. In Haryana, the government gave tablets to children, to school-going kids for education purpose. There are filters in it. They broke all the filters. and there was the survey which was carried out by the government, which showed that majority of the children were seeing porn. So children always find a way to break these filters.
You're right.
That is more likely.
Yeah, I actually stand corrected. I actually stand corrected in my earlier statement that TikTok is the one who's done it. It's actually not. Only Snapchat CEO has disclosed in the US that around 2% of their teen accounts are linked to the US Senate committee meeting earlier this year. That's the only disclosure that has happened. It wasn't TikTok, so I stand corrected on that one. But Aparajita, then on this point, in India, there are several other issues and a more complex issue to be dealt with, which is the issue of shared devices. There are lots of households where you cannot put these parental controls because A, there is no knowledge, and B, the account or the phone would be in the name of one person and the kids are scrolling through it day and night, and then there is no filter. How does one deal with that situation then?
Absolutely, Sonal, and I was just going to say that it's not just TikTok. In fact, it's YouTube also has something called supervised experiences, and they have kids account. So I think a lot of platforms are thinking about such features. And I do want to say that, the impetus to also think about such features is coming from regulation worldwide. So, there is an age-appropriate design code in the UK, which came in 2020, which actually gave a lot of guidance to platforms around what kind of default settings and what kind of safety mechanisms do platforms need to have. So some of this is also response to that regulation. We don't have something like that in India right now. And to your question about India being, having a unique context, having a shared device context. So the kind of regulation that we require in India also needs to take into account. And the second thing that I do want to say is that we did a survey of more than 10,000 young children in 4 different states. And these were mostly children from, lower middle income households or even underprivileged backgrounds. And they reported that 80% of them, their parents took their help to navigate online platforms, right? So the idea that parents are able to control children's behavior online, I think it turns on its head in a place like India, where digital literacy is so low, and there are so many people who are coming online for the first time. They not only are navigating social media for their parents, they are helping them do digital payments, they are helping them do online banking. And so the context that we have in India is quite different. And when it comes to shared devices, you're absolutely right. The question is, are parents using online platforms safely? I think a lot of children would agree that we don't think that as well. So when you have one device in the family and, the parent is using for scrolling whatever they can, and they are adults, so they can access any kind of content, the phone would not know, or the platform would not know that now the phone is in hand of a minor. So they would be seeing the same content. Especially this is rampant, of course, in households which only have 1 or 2 devices, and there are more family members using the platform.
Yeah, and you're right, this applies a lot more to YouTube actually, where there would be one account, or maybe say Netflix in other cases, where it would be one account in the family and then you don't know how to actually go around it. Uday sir, let me come to you then. What exactly are the laws then in India at the moment when it comes to content exposure for kids? And you know that we've had a lot of back and forth between the government and the platforms on various occasions, various other things as well. But coming directly on control or parental control on kids and the kind of content they watch, what does the law say?
I don't think there is any control from the government. Take, for example, OTT, there is no control, there is self-regulation. And the worst part is that in self-regulation, the committee consists of members who are dishing out this content. There is a self-regulation, there is a Supreme Court judge in there, but the committee has these people also, So basically, you see, the fight is, let us come to the main issue. Main issue is that India is I would say in a cultural crisis, in one sense, The kind of rapes, I am directly linking sexually perverted content to rapes. And we have got 8 studies, international studies, including international studies, which like very credible studies, which prove that sexually perverted content is the main instigator of the rapists. Take Bundy, the most known rapist killer of America, the most notorious criminal of America. In 1989, before he was sentenced to death, he gave an interview. He killed 30 women after raping them. He gave an interview that I came to Florida jail. There were rape accused in Florida jail also. And I am now convinced that pornography is the main instigator of the rapists. So I think this is a very serious
Well, I
crisis.
think the jury, yeah.
No.
The jury is still out on
You see, what they are dishing out. What they are
all of this.
No, what they are dishing out. For example, there is an Ullu app. Even your old Balaji. What they are dishing out. Like Ullu app. Sexual perversion between daughter-in-law, daughter-in-law, father-in-law, son-in-law, mother-in-law. Teacher, student.
No, I get your point. Uday sir, I get your point. But yeah. I get that, he's sort of actually saying that a lot of crimes that we are seeing at an extreme level are also all insinuated. It sort of stems from this.
In a big
but
way.
I think, of course, that is a reality and much needs to be talked about that. But Aparajita, coming down to other issues, today, youngsters, more in their mental health being impacted by the sheer level of digital addiction is under major question, right? We are looking at things like having issues with body, how you look, what you wear, what you do, how you behave, where you go, travel, vacation. All of this sort of has an impact on a young, impressionable mind. And we are looking at kids as young as 6 and 7 now who are holding phones in their hands. So my question then really is this, that even with parental control, has a lot of onus now being put on the parents again, that you control it, and the platform sort of saying that, okay, we can do this much and not more?
Thanks, Sonal. I think you're absolutely right. I think there is, we need to think about who all is responsible. So I don't think it's about either parents or platforms. I think there is an ecosystem around children and we have to see that together. So I think a lot of this idea that, mental health is getting impacted by social media. First of all, there is conflicting evidence on it. I think, there was a paper in Nature recently which looked at many different studies that have happened across the board, which said that it's so difficult to isolate what is causing mental health issues in teenagers, because it's not like social media is the only change that has happened in the last 20 years. There are so many things that have also changed in the world around them. For example, in India, the family size has shrunk more. There's climate events which prevent children from going out and sort of, accessing playgrounds, etc. So there are so many different things that are happening around children. And even as sir is saying, violence, when I was a teenager, half of my teenage, there was no social media, and half of my teenage, there was social media. So I kind of have seen both worlds. And sir, people had access to sexual content even before social media. It was Palika Bazaar before social media. So I think teenagers have a way to find what they are really looking for. And I don't think the answer is that, you ban something, because they also find ways to go around bans. I think the question is...
and there is identity thefts and the rest of it,
Absolutely. So I think the question is that how can you create an incentive structure so that social media platforms can do their best to make sure that they do not come across this content. Actually, under the IT Act, there are obligations on social media platforms to, on best effort basis, prevent, for example, child sexual abuse material coming up on platforms. They also have to comply with takedown orders when the government flags something as something that needs to be taken down. Having said that, there is so much content on social media, and also cultural context varies a lot. For example, a woman in bikini, maybe in the West, it's not something that we consider that, it's
True.
content is not suitable, but that changes very quickly. And within India also, there is so much cultural diversity. So content moderation is always difficult. And I think that is why there's
Yeah.
this understanding that in the case of teens, parents have to play a bigger part because every family has its own cultural ethos, and therefore parents need to decide what should their children be exposed to. But there also, I think there is a fine balance. You cannot give surveillance powers to parents to the extent that they are able to read all your conversations and, they have access to everything that you're doing online. So I think this balance, which I think Instagram through its features is also trying to make, where you can see who you have texted, but you can't see what you have texted. That's a fine balance that, platforms need to make.
All right, fascinating points, but very, good points there. Aparajita, thank you so much for joining us. Sudesa, thank you so much for joining us as well. On that note, what do you think is the solution? Do you know how to strike that balance to ensure that your child is exposed but not too much, is not taking a step back from technology but also not falling prey to it? Well, if you have answers, do write into us. For the moment, we're going to step into a break. Coming up on the other